This is Robert Clotworthy, the narrator of The Curse of Oak Island, and I have a question for you. Could it be that you are listening to The Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream?
Yes, indeed, you are listening to The Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream. I am your host, Jeff Freeman, and today, John Edwards in the co-host chair there, and I are hosting our very special guest, Jeffrey Irving. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Hey. Good to see you again. John, nice to see you. Jeff, always a pleasure. Great to be here.
This is another one of those that I've been so excited for because I just know, and I had, as I was telling you earlier, I had to pick John. I always like to pick somebody who can really relate to our special guest, and I knew John would be the perfect person to do this with because of his expertise and his research. Kind of coincides with what you do, so I knew it would be perfect. And it already in our pre-show meeting, folks, it has been very lively already. So you're in for a treat this afternoon on this show. Before we get started, I want to do a little housekeeping for everyone. If you're out there on the YouTube side, please click on that subscribe button for us and click on that notification bell because that tells you whenever we have new content coming up. And if you like our content, give us a thumbs up there. It really helps us out a lot with the YouTube stuff. We really appreciate that very, very much. And also, if you'd like to help support the show, we have our Patreon channel out there at patreon.com, and it's jfree906, just like everywhere else. So with that said, and welcome everybody that's coming in. We got a lot of people showing up already. We're really happy to see you here with us today. I tell you what, Jeffrey Irving has got a lot of different things he's going to be talking about this afternoon. And we're going to get started with the very first thing, which is you started an Oak Island Library on Facebook. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was, you buy one book, then all of a sudden you got to buy another book.
Yeah, okay. I see Punch back there. Yeah.
I started my little experience with this whole thing about 18 years ago, actually. And I thought I had a simple story to tell, which is, the book I'm writing. And it's called The Ark of the Covenant and the Quest for the White Stone. And the more I researched, the bigger the story became. Mm-hmm. Okay, I had a couple little things. I kind of had the ending first, and then it was to try and research, to disprove theories, justify theories, and it just mushroomed, gigantic. And it's kind of the same thing with the Oak Island mystery. Now, I've said this many times to many people, my book is not about Oak Island. It features Oak Island. Mm-hmm. But the more I got into the Oak Island story, I realized just how phenomenal this mystery has become. We look at the show, I was on a century ago in season 3, right? You know what I mean? Like we're in season 9.
Yeah.
Who would have thought, right?
I know, right?
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And in all my research, I would just, I heard of this article, so I have to go chase it down. Oh, what a brilliant article. Well, now that collection of articles is, 50 plus. I think I'm closing in on like 55.
Wow.
Okay. Different magazine articles. And they're all written right from 1893, the oldest one I have.
Wow.
Clean through. You know what I mean? 1905, 1906. So it is so interesting to get a perspective in the moment. You know what I mean? It's one thing for us to read about the story today, knowing what we know. But in the moment back then, they didn't know. They were still searching. And, there's always the line on the show, and it comes up continuously, respect the mystery, right? Respect the mystery. When you read these articles that are in this Oak Island Library, and by the way, it's free to join. Facebook,
yep.
Oak Island
Library. I'm going to bring up a picture of it here real quick.
Sure.
It's the front page of it. Yeah. I am a member of it, and I suggest that you all follow this or join because it's really, really interesting stuff. And I was going to say, too, real quick, that John Edwards and I did an IDK talking about some of the old articles. We And then when I got onto your library, I saw you actually had many of the ones, or more obviously than what we did, but we did find some of the same ones. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's been a long time collecting, and it's certainly been fun. Some articles are better written than others. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But
Oh, yeah.
there's some brilliant work in there, and just you really respect the mystery when you respect just how seriously people took it back then.
Yes.
It wasn't just a bunch of guys out with shovels.
Right.
You know what I mean? It started that way with, the three of them way back. But over the years, people have sunk their lives into this. You know what I mean?
That's very true.
I'm going to talk about, Dan Blankenship for a minute, because he's been there a long time, was there a long
There's
time.
a picture of him right there. Yep.
Right? Exactly. And I'm not going to tell you which article I'm going to read from because I want you to find it yourself, of course. But I'm just going to read this paragraph as quickly as I can because
all right,
to me, it speaks to the respect of the mystery. Okay. That night I have, senior citizen now.
I got
that
some
night,
too. Yeah.
I have a late dinner with Dan and Mrs. Blankenship. Except for the three of us at the corner table, the candlelit dinner room at the Longboat Inn is empty and about to close. I can see Oak Island and the causeway illuminated by moonlight out the window. Dan sits with his back to it. We have finished eating, and Dan has ordered us all around a drambuie. I had been hoping that he would disclose some secrets to me. Yeah, as if. Who was it that buried the Oak Island treasure? What was the treasure? What signs or evidence? But through most of the evening, Dan had been uncommunicative. When you first came to Oak Island in 1965, I began trying again. Did you ever have any idea that you'd still be working full time on it 7 years later? Okay. This article was written in 73.
Wow.
Okay. No, and I wouldn't be here if I knew it. And that's the God's honest truth. What kept you here all this time then? It's not what you think, he pauses and sighs. Remember, I told you I've never been beaten. Well, that's no lie. I've never been beaten by any man, by any challenge. I've never lost at anything. Maybe I should have, but I haven't. But Oak Island's not that. It's not like climbing a mountain that's never been climbed. It's not up here. I'm not up here doing it just to see if it can be done. I'm not still here because of the challenge of something unknown. Now, here is the respect part. I'm here because I think I know. I think I know what's down there, and it's grander than anything anyone has imagined.
Wow.
If I'm right, it's grander than any theory anyone's put forward. If I'm right, it's so grand, it puts every other theory way out in left field. And it makes every other theory look insignificant.
Wow.
Okay? Now,
Wow.
he's speaking from the heart. Now, there's a couple other questions. It says, I didn't say that. Not quite. Not quite. I won't tell you my theory, but I will tell you I placed the date of the works 100 years earlier than anyone else does. The earliest anyone has it is 1630.
Wow.
Now think. It was 1620 when the Pilgrims arrived. By 1630, there was activity all along the coast.
Yep.
And not much escaped attention. But if you go back 100 years, who were the only people around? Okay? So when you think about that, he's absolutely true. How can you dig a hole in the 1630s without somebody knowing about it? Right? Just common sense stuff. Okay? And there's just one other piece here that I want to read.
That's really neat. And that's right from Dan Blankenship. So
right out of his mouth.
Cool.
Okay, so now here's another part. Mrs. Blankenship, who hasn't said much during all this, speaks up. Dan, I just don't think it was pirates at all. Okay. Oh, sorry. I never finished the first sentence. Who was it? The Spanish, he said. The Spanish, 1530-ish, right?
Mhm.
They'd have fleets of 10 or 12 ships bringing treasure up and across from the Caribbean and the Americas. And during the summer, they take the northern route for the same reason anyone goes north in the summer. They leave the hurricanes behind.
Ah, very true. Yep.
And by coming up this way, you see what I'm getting at?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, would they bring it all across back home? Wouldn't you think, if you were the commander of one of those fleets, of stashing some of the treasure for yourself? Wouldn't it be easy in a fleet of 10 ships to say 5 were lost in a storm?
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't you think maybe you could come back for it and live like a king?
Mm-hmm.
They had the labor and they had the ships. And that's very important. We're going to talk about that later on. And then the last little thing from this article, when Mrs. Blankenship speaks up, says, I just don't think it was pirates. Dear, I didn't say it was pirates, because he's not referring to pirates. He's referring to, just anybody. Well, Ponce de Leon, he was one of the biggest rapers of the Caribbean there was, as far as resources go. Okay.
Right.
Not still the right word, just in different context. Okay. Spanish. Okay. At this point, the conversation began to enter a strange new realm. I told you, this is Mrs. Blankenship speaking. I told you all along who's down there, and I told you you're going to be the one to bring her up for me.
Wow.
Her. Well, dear, Dan began, I don't know about that, but, honey, I know you're going to bring her up. Well, she didn't say honey. I just added that. Just so you know that it's her.
Yeah, right.
I've had a feeling from the beginning she's down there, and I've told you all along that one of these days you're going to bring her up for me. Her, I asked Mrs. Blankenship. Who is she? The Blessed Virgin. Okay.
Wow.
The Sacred Virgin. That's going to be important later on.
All right.
Okay.
So that's what these people believed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what drove them. You know what I mean? And you cannot tell me from all the history we do know of the Blankenships that Mrs. Blankenship didn't have an opinion. She had an opinion.
Right.
Okay. And they all respected that. And when you think about, 7 years in, right? 7 years in, he still believes that it's not just a box of gold. So what else is it? Right? And, to me, the effort has to justify what was there or what is there. You're not just going to dig a hole.
I agree. Yeah, we've talked
down
about
in the ground.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it makes no sense.
Nope.
It wasn't just a bunch of drunk pirates digging a hole in the ground to bury some loot.
Now,
I'm not saying that didn't take place on different parts of the island.
Right, exactly. We talked about that too. Yep.
You know what I mean? But as far as where my head is at, my head is in that area. Whether it's 100 before, 50 years in the middle. I mean, I'm pretty specific, will be in my book as to what I think took place. And in all the articles, leaving the name Columbus out. Okay. First of all, on the show, I said, quote unquote, I was very careful in choosing my words. Christopher Columbus was responsible for bringing the Ark of the Covenant and other religious artifacts to Oak Island.
Right. I remember that.
He was there with a shovel, even though they found a leather shoe that carbon dates to 1492.
Yes, they did. I do remember you also said, I'm not saying Christopher Columbus dug the hole. I remember you saying that on the show too.
Exactly. But we'll get to the Columbus thing after. I mean, the point of the library is there's so much information that's just, most of it isn't online. You know what I mean? It's literally in a magazine article. Okay. You know what I mean? So what I felt was that this information should just be readily available.
Right.
And simple as that. And if you're an Oak Island fan, yeah, you can go out and buy it. But a lot of the stuff, yeah, a little pricey. Like that 1905, that didn't cost me $10. Okay, so the people that don't want to spend the investment, they don't have to. We just come to Oak Island. It's all there, and it all will be. I'm still uploading articles, whenever I have the time, and I think
Right.
I'm like halfway through. So I've still got another half, and I still have 10 sitting in Calais, Maine, and hopefully the border opens up next week so I can go get them. So,
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
Yeah,
so the
so-
library is just a great spot to just go do some reading that you're not going to find anywhere else.
Right. And I've been out there and I've looked it over. And like I said, John and I had talked about some of these same articles that you have, not near the extent that you have, but we did. And knowing now that there's this resource center of the library with all this stuff out there, folks, it is fascinating. You really need, we do have it linked in our description down below in the description of this show. The library is linked there. So all you got to do is click on it. It'll take you right to the library, or you can just go to Facebook and just type in Oak Island Library and it will come right up. And it's an awesome page. I really appreciate your doing that. It's been long overdue coming. It really has.
Well, the feedback has been really good. I mean, I haven't put a lot of marketing effort into it yet because I kind of like to get the majority of the articles up, right? And it takes time. And I got a full-time job. I get kids, the whole 9 years. I have a life outside of Oak Island. I'm not retired yet. I can't go 100% because if I could have gone 100%, my book would have been out 10 years ago. And that's actually not true. People say, well, what are you going to put your book out? I'm kind of like Rick and Marty. I want that one thing, okay? That one smoking gun that says, yes, he was here.
Yep.
I mean, I've already got enough circumstantial evidence. I mean, how many times have we heard the word it's Spanish or it's Portuguese in the last 9 years?
Right.
Like every other thing that came out of the ground, other than the recent run of, the English stuff sitting on the surface here and there all over the island, which is obvious because there were people in that zone in that era, the late 1700s. So of course they're going to drop stuff. That's the same as the island I look after or look at. So
yeah, Kate was asking a question here. If the book is 1905, then it's out of copyright. So can you digitize it? Are you allowed to do that?
I'll put it this way: they're all going to go public until somebody says take it down. You know what?
There you go.
Yep. I mean, I'm not trying to profit off it. I'm sure somebody will say, maybe like if I'm going to repurpose the information until, if a magazine gets offended because I'm showing something from 15 years ago and they say you need to cease and desist, of course I will. It's called hit the delete button. Okay. But I'm not trying to maliciously do anything. If a magazine's 15 years old, guess what? It's sitting in the basement in the back corner of the publishing house that printed the magazine, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I'm an anal old fart, but you'd have to be pretty anal to come after me about something like that, I would think. But in this day and age, you never know.
Yep. And that one there was from Henry DeWitt. He said he said the library is awesome. He found it himself, intrigued for hours.
Yeah.
So
there's
yeah,
a lot
it
of
is.
reading. I ain't gonna lie, there's a lot of them articles I haven't even read yet. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's some great stuff out there. So check that out, folks, when you get a chance. And again, like I said, the link is down below in the description, or just go out.
There's another article I want to mention because I think it's important. There's a really great article about Robert Dunfield's time there. And this is going to lead us into the next conversation. The destruction he did, it tells right in the article, like all the shafts that were there. Like there's 5 or 6 shafts around the original money pit, right? In the old stories. And in fact, I'll show you. Hang on real quick. Right here.
All right, he's going to the library, folks. Here we go.
That's always trouble.
This is
He's
good.
going to the top. He's going to the top shelf find.
I
top
love
shelf.
it.
No, that's the top shelf. Keep it away from the dog. I've
Yeah,
got to
yeah,
have
definitely.
I have a baby gate across the front, and then I have disposable magazines down on the bottom, so that when the dog decides to get a little hungry, he's not chewing into something that's 15.
Oh yeah, you've got some really old books up there. I would hate to see that happen.
Okay, so there's some of the original testified works. Okay, the head and shaft, all the shafts are in here, right?
Wow.
And literally, Dunfield came in, cleaned it all, took every bit of it. So people say, "Oh, well, there's searcher wood in there." Yes, there is searcher wood in there, by all means. But Dunfield got most of it. That's why they get excited when they find a piece of wood, because it's got a 50-50 chance of either being original or searcher. Right. But no matter what, it's really, really old, and they have to find out when. Then they find out, well, okay, this is part of this shaft. Well, that verifies that story. So every time they find something that verifies the old stories, it's like all the work down in Smith Cove. You had to verify the story. Well, the drains, right? The finger drains are so important that they need to verify it. They just can't go by prospectus to raise shares from 1896, right? So Dunfield's destruction was criminal. That's my humble opinion. And I've talked to another member of the team, and looking at his father's home videos. And, we talked about that after I saw the videos. I said, that backs up exactly what I said was going on. Dunfield, in my opinion, was not there to search. He was there to destroy evidence. Okay. That's my humble opinion. Okay. Wow. Because when you look at how he went about things, there's no searching involved whatsoever. He literally plowed over Smith's Cove. He took all the dirt from the top of the hill. And because the elevation's a lot lower now, right?
Yes,
what it was originally.
Yes.
He just plowed that right down and out into the sea to cover up everything. Okay.
Wow.
That's how the original stone triangle, that was there for years, and kind of a critical piece.
It is.
Plowed it over. He just plowed it into the sea with bulldozer.
Well, Jeff Irving, that begs the question: to what purpose? If you're going to destroy evidence, and are we talking secret society purpose, or what purpose? Okay, I can tell by the shrug. Yeah, for what purpose, and what was he protecting?
Well, and don't forget, when you get presidents involved,
yes,
you have to wonder why. Right?
Yep.
Presidents don't have time for treasure hunting. Now, mind you, the Roosevelts are right around the corner from me. They have a house in Campobello, like literally to practically see. Well, I can see half the island from here. So you wonder why they would be so involved in it. And don't forget, Roosevelt's grandfather-in-law was part of one of the early teams, Delano's.
Yeah, he was.
Delano's, yes.
Right?
Yep.
And they're related to the Irvings too, by the way.
Oh, wow.
The grandmother was an Irving.
Wow.
Same as a lot of people involved in this story. So, I think back then there was not the government oversight that we have today. Okay. And there's a reason for that. And, in the end of the article, when his pit collapsed, remember he dug that great big huge hole with the big crane, and then overnight the thing all caved in, and he just threw his arms up there and went back to California.
Yep.
I think it said right in the article, the locals took a sigh of relief because they did not want their tourist attraction any further destroyed,
Right.
because he'd already destroyed 90% of it. You
Right.
know what I mean? So, you know,
And you know, and bringing that up, you know, now with our current situation going on Oak Island in the last couple of episodes, especially the episode that we just talked about a couple of days ago, episode 3. Now you have the Department of Culture and what is it? I'm sorry,
community heritage.
Yes, and heritage. You're right. Community, culture, and heritage stepping in and doing some work there. What's your take on all of that? I mean, you live in that area, so I'm sure you have a.
Hey, Jeff Freeman, can we throw up the map for Jeff Irving to see? I'm not sure if you've seen the map yet. I know the Canadian TV is about a week off. Jeff, is that correct, Jeff?
Yeah. No, I have not seen episode 3. I mean, you know, I've seen.
Yeah.
So nice thing about Facebook, and 2 days later, just about anything that's important.
This is episode 2.
I kind of prefer to see it live, so I try to stay off Facebook.
Sure. So these areas in red, now this area southeast corner of the swamp is where they found. They recently just found some artifacts there that are likely Mi'kmaq, and then pottery, and then there's an area here encompassing part of the triangle. I mean, I'm sorry, the top of the swamp there, and also the eye cross. And then the green area is good to go. You're still able to. That's Money Pit and all of that, and part of most of Smith's Cove that doesn't get covered in water. And then the red outside of that is off limits for now, needing work. You know, so there's what we have currently. That they,
you know, one thing in and it's also in the articles. For a lot of years, you know, well, one, there's no oversight, but 2, there was no desire for oversight. Okay. When guys are just out treasure hunting and they dig up a piece of pottery, the government's going, yeah, okay, big deal. Okay, that's not going to make the front page of the Herald, right? But things have changed dramatically in probably the last 30 years, 20 years. I mean, let's face it, it's not our land. Okay. It's Aboriginals are called that for a reason. They're the first peoples there. You know, a lot of people, a lot of local bands prefer First Nations. A lot of them don't like First Nations, the term itself. Okay.
Right.
Over here, it's Passamaquoddy. Okay. That's who I, you know, cohabitate with in this area. Over there, it's Mi'kmaq. And there's an interesting story about that. So try and remind me. So, John, if you don't mind, remind me about the Watertown Treaty. Okay. Locally here in New Brunswick, we just put the superhighway through the south coast of New Brunswick to join Maine with Nova Scotia, so we get all the tourists over to your place quicker. Okay, not your place, but take all you guys from the States and get them over to, you know, Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia quicker. I mean, there's a few things to see here in New Brunswick, but, you know, let's be honest. Okay, Nova Scotia is where it's at, right? So, you know, if you like trees, New Brunswick's the place to be. And we've got a fabulous coast. I shouldn't have. I'm just teasing. I could just see half of New Brunswick in an uproar by the end.
Yeah, they go, oh, Jeff.
Yeah. No. Listen, I live in New Brunswick for a reason. I love it here. Okay. But we just get through building the super 4-lane highway here not that long ago. It's been done. I think we might be in year 7 or 8. As they are laying out the land for the highway and stealing all the land from the landowners through appropriation, which the governments are allowed to do for fair dollar on the tree. Yeah, right. They hit an Aboriginal site right dead center where the highway was supposed to go.
Wow.
Everything come to a screeching halt. And, you know, the Department of Archaeology out of Fredericton went down and carbon dated some of the finds. And sure enough, the site was 1,200 years old. Okay.
Wow. Mhm.
So that put a kibosh on the highway. So they had to divert the highway. Well, we're not talking $50 here, right? You know what I mean? So that's the importance. Now, here's the real good story. The Department of Archaeology in New Brunswick is already investigating some First Nation sites. So, New Brunswick, big on archaeology, okay? I don't imagine the team is, I don't know how many guys are up there, but I don't think there's that many. And I don't think the budget's real big, okay? So literally they went in and they literally properly removed everything from the site. And to my knowledge, it is in storage being sifted through, a bucket at a time, because that's how it works.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Underneath the 1,200-year-old site was another site.
I was going to say probably an older site. Yep.
11,000 years old.
Wow. 11,000 years old.
1,000 years old.
Wow.
Okay. They didn't even have time to touch that site or the budget to touch that site. So what they did was they lugged in 10 feet of crushed rock and put it on top to preserve the site until a future time that they can actually get to it. And there's a Corps of Commissioners guy sitting out there getting paid to sit on his phone, all day to guard the entrance to that.
When did you say they found this again? The 11,000?
If I'm not mistaken, I think we're looking at about 8 years now.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Seeley's Cove. I think they kind of, they don't want anybody out there. Okay.
Mhm.
Not that you could anyway, but I think in the press it was kind of identified as Penfield, so it's just on the outstretch of Penfield.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I mean? The importance of the cultural heritage is such that they're willing to divert the highway away from it.
Right. And it's good. I mean? They should.
And of course they would. So now we're going to flip over to Oak Island. So, it's always been on the radar. You've always had to have licenses to do this and licenses to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but they have not found anything of cultural and historical significance, archaeologically speaking. We haul up a coin from, like the 1607 coin. Well, that's really cool, but is it culturally important?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a Spanish coin that somebody threw overboard, right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's crazy to us. That just makes our head explode.
Oh, absolutely.
We love it. But as far as government involvement, yes, the government looks at it and they decide whether it comes back to the Laginas. And don't forget, anything has to go to the government and then they decide whether it comes back, which is why they opened up the museum so that they would have a way to get some of those artifacts to stay on the island for public display. Right.
Yep.
But, there's always been oversight for, like 30 years as far as permits, treasure trove, and all those licensing. So now we fast forward to now, and all of a sudden they're finding things literally that are culturally important.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, Oak Island is on the radar. They have the full attention of the Department of CCH, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So, and, as much as they are careful, the team is as careful as they can be. Let's be honest about it. We watch the show. But if I was an archaeologist, which I am not, okay, I'd probably shudder in my boots sometimes. You get the big backhoe dragging stuff along. Well, if he cracks open a vase from 400 years,
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is what I think is going through the government's mind at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
All of us is sudden like, geez, those guys, all these years, they might be right. There might be something important there.
Sure.
So they're going to want to make sure that it is done properly. It's not about taken the treasure away, even though it's theirs. It is the government's. Make no mistake about it.
Sure.
Anything 12 inches below the soil belongs to the government.
Yep.
Okay. And
Yeah.
it's their choice to include the landowners in it. It's like if I went up and got my prospector's license, I can go on anybody's land I want. And if I stake a claim and I find gold, it becomes the government property. And then the three of us have to sit down, the government, the landowner, and the prospector.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Wow.
Because it's the government's property. And they're going to take most of it. And yeah, they'll give you a chunk. It's just like oil exploration in Texas. You know, the landowner gets rich, but it's the government's oil.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
you know, so it's the same thing. So I think it's a good thing. I know it's frustrating, and I know it may slow down the process, but it's needed. And it's law. Whether it's needed or not, it's law. So the three of us could debate it all day.
Sure.
It doesn't matter. It's the law.
But Jeff, we're also looking at where the Micmac and and other First Nation tribes. There's no way explorers to the New World, in the Nova Scotia area, could have made any inroads, to New Ross or wherever they traveled, in New France and down to St. Lawrence or wherever they were, without Indigenous nations' help. It's just impossible. First Nation help, Native American help. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
There has to be a certain exchange going on, whether it be cultural, whether it be, commerce or whatever, for that to happen, for people to come to the New World. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. When I was, it's part of my book, but it's also part of my presentation, when in season 3. I mean, y'all know, like not everything gets shown. Okay. I mean, I sat in the chair for 4 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a preview 45 minutes ago, right? So, and trust me, I can raise some eyebrows. But, one of the questions I said to the team, I said, do you really think that they would go to the bother of creating the money pit for whatever reasons they did? And of course, I had my reason. And then just sail off into the sunset and forget about it? No, of course not. You're going to leave somebody there to guard it. I don't care what you tell me. Well, who's there? The Mi'kmaq, the Aboriginals in that area.
Sure.
Over here, it's Passamaquoddy. Over there, it's Mi'kmaq. Up the St. John River next to me is, Tobique tribe, right? I mean, those are the First Nations people.
Sure.
The old capital of the Mi'kmaq Nation used to be in Fredericton, New Brunswick, just north of me. You know what I mean? Interesting. I don't know. Have you ever heard of the Watertown Treaty?
No, but I'm supposed to remind you.
Yes.
I did hear about it about 5 minutes ago.
If you go back if you look it up, one of the very first acts in the first week of the Continental Congress in 1776, was to create a treaty between the people of America, the 13 colonies, and the Passamaquoddy, St. John River, and Mi'kmaq Indians. It was one of the first things they did. It's like act number 3 or act number 4, it's pretty high on the list.
You're right.
And the Wikipedia version, is that it was to say thank you for the help during the War of Independence. There's not a lot of facts surrounding that. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. That line does not make any sense to me whatsoever. And I've asked a lot of people about it, and of course nobody's around to know. That little thing just kind of got swept under. They have a ceremony once a year down in Massachusetts. But in that treaty, they guaranteed for eternity protection for those 3 Indian bands and basically citizenship. They can become, and they all have little cards to get across the border, and they can become part of the American Armed Forces, which entitles them to citizenship. So
Wow.
they are a protected society outside of the United States.
Wow.
Hmm.
I did not know that.
Interesting. Wow.
Neither did I. Why would they do that? That is the question. Is why would they do that? Well, there's all kinds of us that think the money that might have been on Oak Island was used to finance the War of Independence.
Right.
Mhm,
Yep. That's
mhm,
been a
So
theory
if
we've talked
it
about. Yeah.
had been guarded by
Mhm.
the First Nations people, I'd say that's a pretty good reason to give them a free pass for life.
Wow.
Isn't it?
Yep. I think that's Court Lindahl has actually talked
That's-
about that quite
mhm,
extensively. Yep.
mhm.
Well, I talked about it too, but
Yep. I imagine you had.
okay. Hey, listen, there's no way to tell history without recycling information.
Sure.
Yep.
So, we can all say, oh, it's mine. Well, no, it really isn't, because it's history and somebody has
Mhm.
always said it before. It's impossible. But the only theory out there that I've heard of so far that I think is 100% spot on original was Aaron Helton King's.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't see anything recycled, and you know what I mean by recycled in that.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
everything else, it's impossible unless you find a few things. Which I have found a few things, but for me to say, oh, I created the Spanish theory, well, that's horse patootie, right? You know what I mean? Because everybody thinks it was the Spanish. Everybody that's been on that island has always thought, at the end of the day, when you cross off all the others, the ones that aren't all that logical, the kid theory, there's all kinds of theories out there. I love the bacon theory. Don't get me wrong. I love all that. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. Okay. And, we're all allowed to agree to disagree on certain things. So,
Well,
Oh, go ahead, John.
I was going to say, Jeff, and it's probably what you were going to say. The recent findings on Oak Island,
Yep.
I'm sure you've seen it, Jeff Irving, was the rose gold that
Yep.
they found recently, and the wood that dated from 1450, Jeff, to 1650, somewhere
Yep.
in there.
Yep.
Which is the right time period that you're talking about. But what group do you attribute that?
well,
You're in the age
it's
of exploration.
easy. It's easy to label the group, if you want to call it, as Templars, Freemasons, Knights of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are all part of the group, but I think we're dealing with a very specific set of individuals. Okay,
Mhm.
because there's an old expression, and I believe it's American military, maybe not American Navy: loose lips sink ships.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay, if you want to keep a secret,
You don't tell too many
You
people.
go incognito. Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah.
shut
Yeah.
up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's really not just that simple. It was funny because I was always trying to label. The first days of my research was like, who's the good guys, who's the bad guys? And I go, okay, it's these guys, and it's like, well, no, that doesn't make sense. It was the French king that persecuted the Templars, so the French can't be the good guys, and it's like, going crazy here. So finally, it dawned on me to separate monarchs, government, from the people.
Okay.
Okay, that was the first step. Okay, because there's always bad guys. There's bad Templars. There's good Templars in leadership in different parts of history. The Templars, one of their biggest jobs during the Crusades were the peacekeepers. They were the ambassadors. They negotiated all the peace treaties.
Right.
And then you'd get one idiot come along, and he'd get a little aggressive because he'd want to be more powerful. So then he'd attack people, right?
Yep.
And here we are back fighting again. You know what I mean? So it's not about the bad guys. Aren't the people? The bad guys are the leaders in the specific day of the week, because leaders change continuously.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
So you're saying the bad guys are the institutions, not necessarily the leaders, correct? Like the
exactly.
Vatican.
So that's why it's hard to label.
You know.
That's where I was going with
Okay.
this. That's why it's hard to label. It's hard to say the group is the Templars, the group is the Rosicrucians, the group is the Freemasons.
Even though it bled into there.
There were probably all three of those groups involved in the group, but to me, it's the group. And it's funny how things work. two things. I got to try to remember them. They're long-winded if you haven't figured it out. I was sitting in the car with my daughter one day.
Okay.
She was just a little kid, 5, 6 years old. Oh, Daddy, you're going to be so mad at me. And I'm going, oh, great. Why, dear? Oh, I lost that really expensive necklace you gave me. And I go, dear, that came out of a quarter slot machine. It's okay. It's just costume jewelry. Costume jewelry. Right? And then the first light went off. You know, the Ark of the Covenant was protected for 1,600 years. Then all of a sudden, the moose, Gonzo,
Right.
disappeared into history. It was captured. And it's like, okay, if I knew the Romans were coming, because this is when it disappeared, right?
Correct.
During the time of Christ and all that stuff. 98, I think it was. Well, the Romans just don't show up the day before. Right? They're marching.
It takes a while to get.
You know, the scouts are out there. They're running back and they're going, hey, the Romans are coming. They're going to be here in 3 months.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
So are you going to leave the best jewelry sitting on the table when you know the robbers are coming?
No.
You're going to have fakes.
Right.
If what's his name? Terrible. Painted 2 Mona Lisas that were identical, which one's worth more money? The first one.
Right.
The second one is his knockoff. Right. So who's to say there wasn't 2 Ark of the Covenants, 2 menorahs? Maybe when the Romans showed up, they captured all these things, but they didn't capture the good stuff. They captured the knockoff.
Well, weren't there
There's
more
actually
than
a passage in the Bible where something else was destroyed and they made another one. It's right in the Bible how they made a second one. And that's when it clued in. It's like, no, the real Ark is still out there. They captured the fake Ark.
I think John was going to mention about more than one menorah, right?
Yeah, there's supposedly multiple menorahs.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Archetypus shows one of those menorahs being hustled out of Jerusalem, I think, at the time.
Right.
Captured by, the Romans? Is that right? I believe so.
Exactly.
You know?
So at least my second point. On my way, you know, I've been down to Oak Island a few times. On my way down, twice it happened. But on the first one, I picked up on it. I'm driving along, and there's a great big transport truck in front of me. And up here, we have no name brand. Yellow truck with black letters, no name. And then it dawned on me, that's the group. Right. There is no name, because if there's no name for the group, it can't be written down. It can't be referenced. So it is a secret society. They're just unknown because guess what? If they don't have a name, you can't talk about it.
Right.
And that makes sense.
You know, so who are the people? I don't know what they're called, but it is the people that have taken the effort to put it there.
Well, let me ask you this: 1307, you know, the desolation of the Templars, 1312, 13, the trial of the Templars, and Jeff and I have always talked about this: how the Templars themselves had to go first underground incognito. I think at the Vatican, at the time, the Vatican was hunting down the remnants of the Templars for whatever they had, whether it be artifacts, esoteric knowledges, the teachings of Jesus, whatever was there, threatened the church enough and threatened the dogmas that they had to hunt them down. Sure. They put the Knights of Malta in place, the Knights Hospitallers in place, the Vatican does, as their kind of yes men of to inherit all the Templar assets. And then the question is, what happened to the Templars? They went underground. Maybe they became, I'm not saying Masons as in Freemasons, I mean stonemasons or guild Masons, where they would have the esoterics and kind of mesh into society, and they could travel anywhere because every place needed Masons, you know, or guild people. So that was 100%. A great incognito. And again, rising in the Rosicrucian period to read them find themselves again, you know, in the echelon of Queen Elizabeth's court and other places. So you're right. It was always kept, you know, incognito, underground, because you didn't want the Vatican. I guess my first question is the Vatican at this point hunting them down, hunting the remnants of the Templars down in your estimation? And then secondly, is it multiple groups that have this same esoteric truths, or is it different groups?
Well, I mean, we're talking two things here. We're
Yes.
talking the treasury of 1307, which is the gold. It's the dineros, okay? The shiny objects that Dave Blankenship's always looking for, right?
Mhm.
And then you've got
Mhm.
the collection of the religious artifacts. The Ark of the Covenant. Is the Ark of the Covenant super important because it's just a gold box with wings on the top?
No.
Cherubims?
No.
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 What
much
makes
more
the Ark of the Covenant important?
Well, it's the seed of wisdom. It's the light of God. It's where
What-
the original
what-
Ten Commandments were.
What's inside
The Ten
the
Commandments.
The
of the
Ten
Covenant?
Commandments.
And,
the remnants of the
also,
original Ten
well, there's
Commandments.
supposed to be several things, and also a
Yes,
sample
yes.
of manna is supposed
There
to
you
be
go.
as well.
Yep.
Okay.
And the light of
But,
God.
what were the arks originally designed for? They were originally designed as ossuaries. Okay. That was what their original design was for. Important people were buried in the ark. An ark was placed in a tomb. Okay. Now, Egyptians, they had their esophaguses. Forgetting the first half of
Yeah.
the word,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
Okay. But in other
Sarcophagus.
words, it's ossuaries. Okay. That is the term that we're talking about. So then all of a sudden, if you think, okay, if the ark was so desperately sought after by the church, why would that be? Okay, so you have to answer that question. So that leads to be, what is in the Ark of the Covenant? Okay, that is so important. Is it the bones of Moses? Could it be the bones of Aaron? Could it be the bones of the original Sacra Mare? Okay, the Sacred Virgin in older times, predating Mary. Okay, Sancta Mare is the one of the original beliefs. Sancta Mare is Mother, Mother Earth. The Egyptians all had the sun god, right? You know what I mean? So now we're going way back in time, but that's when the ark was created. So what went into the ark? That is the mystery. Okay, if you ask me, and I had known Mrs. Blankenship at the time, I'm sure she and I could have had a great conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to think about what is so important that the church went after it. Okay. Another little interesting Mi'kmaq story, but get me back on track, please.
I haven't forgotten.
The Concordat was a treaty signed by the Pope and the Mi'kmaq Indians. Okay. And they originally thought that treaty, the Pope allowed the Mi'kmaq to continue to worship their way. That's phenomenal because the Pope doesn't do that. It's my way or the highway. It is still the same today. And I didn't even know this till a few years ago, because I happened to be going out with somebody that was devout Catholic and on Sunday. And I said, so what do they talk about? What's the deal? And she said, oh, well, this Sunday. And they flipped open the book, and that's what they talk about on that Sunday. It is all spelled out. And, the guy can do his own little thing on the side. But every week is filled out in every year, in every church. They're all the same.
Yep.
So total control is what I'm getting at. So for the Pope to sign that treaty now, and this was in 1600s, okay, and that was over across from me in Port Royal in Nova Scotia, the north or the Bay of Fundy side of Nova Scotia is when this took place. And I was talking to a Mi'kmaq at the Interpretation Center, and he's the one that told me this story. And he's the one that introduced me to the Watertown Treaty. He just didn't figure out what the Watertown Treaty was. And so I said, there would not be a Templar alive or a group member representing the group that would ever allow the Ark of the Covenant to go back to the Pope. Never in a million years. Okay. Oh, and what led this story was my daughter was just a little thing, and she had an Oak Island t-shirt on, just like this. And we were walking around this interpretation center. And I had just left Oak Island and gave my whole season 3, episode 9 spiel. Okay. Literally a couple hours earlier. But I wanted some pictures from the interpretation center. And Buddy comes over and talks to my daughter. He's an older gentleman. And he said, "Where'd you get that shirt?" And he says, "Well, we just left Oak Island." I said, "Well, that's really cool. I've got a secret. Can you keep a secret?" And my daughter looks at him. "Well, yeah." Anyway, he says, "Did you know we were the guardians of the Ark of the Covenant?"
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's somebody telling your daughter this.
My daughter, who's like 6 years old.
Wow.
Wow.
And you're going, okay, tell me who is it?
No. Listen, like my daughter knew me enough at this point. She knew what I'm working on because on any given day, the living room was nothing but papers from one side to the other. Listen, the eyeballs on her went just like that, right? Yep. And she said, "Daddy." So I went over and I talked to him. And they still teach that. And I said, "You need to give me somebody that's willing to say that to back up your story." Took me 3 months to track them down. But an elder did acknowledge that that's what they teach. But it is so far out there in today's realm of thinking that when you say that out loud, everybody thinks you're cuckoo, right? You know what I mean? Now, those of us who that are into this stuff, it makes perfect sense. Okay. So to me, it's what was in the Ark. Okay. If you read the Quran, there's a paragraph in the Quran that states it is the relics, okay, of the house of Aaron. So that could be a descendant of Aaron. Aaron would have been Moses' brother, right?
Correct.
Yes, Musa. Yes, his brother. Who supposedly Muhammad is of that line, whereas Jesus is of the Moses line, right? Another little interesting tidbit. The Christian Bible totally doesn't have anything good to say about the Quran, but the Quran acknowledges a lot about Christ time and Moses. I mean, Moses is right up there, but the second most important female is Miriam, which is the sister who disappeared out of the Bible after, Moses was exiled, 40 years of wandering, and there's not one word about Miriam. And then you get into other stuff, Scottish history, which the Irving kings, okay, in the early 10s, right after Robert the Bruce's time, right? The War of Independence. The kings before that were all actually of the Irving line. It was Creanan who married Malcolm's daughter, and Creanan was of the Irish king. So when King Malcolm died, he wanted to amalgamate Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, and that line produced 200 years worth of kings. And during the coronation of King Alexander, who was an Irvin, they dated his lineage all the way back to the Egyptians. And, she was of working for the Pharaoh, the wife of the Pharaoh, the sister of the Pharaoh. That's the old Scottish lore.
One of the Dale Glasser came up and he was asking you, Eddie, you talked about this person that was talking to your daughter. Who was, and he asked the question, he says, who was that person? And what again was he the guardian who was claiming to be? So did you got to talk to this person, right? And
yes.
what group or?
They were First Nation Mi'kmaq.
Oh, okay.
Really?
Okay. I'm not going to reveal the person.
Okay.
Okay.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I understand.
But he is well known as an elder in the Mi'kmaq community.
Wow.
So, yes.
Wow.
Is this elder also a member of a secret society?
Who knows?
Okay. And the reason I ask is I have a good friend, Court Lindell, who he knows a number of the elders in some of the Native American tribes that are Masonic. Yeah. And so they claim heritage in that tradition, which is always very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Or it's in the
Well, I
house,
mean,
by the way.
you know, you
Hey,
asked me
Court.
earlier who the group was, and you know where things went, and you know you mentioned the Templar fleet, right? Uh,
Yes.
you know, in 1307, you know that's when they disappeared. You know, I firmly believe they were met, you know, in Scotland, coincidentally in Irving. Just the Volginas were there, 20 miles away. Okay, I believe they
Sure.
labeled it as Ayrshire. Well, just south of that was the old capital of Scotland, which used to be Irving. Okay, the old seat was Irving because the king was of the Irving line. Okay, the last Irving king died, and then it was Beatrice. Beatrice was the sole heir, and she was in Norway. That's why they call her the Maid of Norway, and she supposedly died in transit on the way back to Scotland. She didn't make it, hence the War of Independence. Okay, but they were bona fide Irvins, which is our heritage name, Erinveine, Erinvin. Worthy men of, well, basically Ireland, but it's Ireland and Scotland. You trace back the family history. So, 1307, I believe they were met by Robert the Bruce, and I think they said that on the show too. I think that was
and it would have been perfect. Robert the Bruce is excommunicated at this point, so it makes sense. Away from the Vatican, excommunicated,
well,
safe
he
haven.
He had killed Buddy in the church, right?
Exactly. Makes sense.
Yeah, Shakespeare guy. Or no, it wasn't the Shakespeare guy. It was anyway. We know what you mean. So his right arm man was William de Irwin. Okay, Irwyn. Okay, of the Scottish branch of the Irvings. He was his personal arms bearer, and he was his personal private secretary, the guy that records all the history in the back corner. You know what I mean? You don't send him out to fight. He records the battle, okay? And he carries the arms. Well, you don't go anywhere without him, right? Common sense.
Correct.
Wherever the king goes, dude goes with him.
Yep.
Okay? And for his service, he was awarded, all the lands of Drum Forest, basically, which is 3/4 of the northern part of Scotland at the time. Significantly, we're going to go back to the ossuary story. I keep coming back, okay? The Ark ossuary. St. Columba's, the Molly Musk reliquary is the same thing as an ossuary, only a reliquary is small. You know, in all those pictures, everybody's carrying around a little purse all through time. It's actually not a purse. It's called a reliquary because it holds bones, relics of important people, like kings or people they think are gods. They carry them into battle. The Molly Musk reliquary had bones of St. Columba, who was from Ireland, and he taught Christianity throughout Europe. His bones were in the reliquary. That reliquary is in the museum in Scotland. That was in the Irving guardianship for 1,200 years.
Wow.
Okay. So the Irvings were in tight with the Bruces. Okay. So you can't tell me that they didn't have anything to do with what happened at that point in time. So where did the treasure go? I've always been torn between it going to Scotland or Tomar, Portugal. Okay. One of my strongest beliefs was that it went to Tomar, Portugal. Okay. In what order, I do not know, because Scotland was a safe haven for the Templars, and so was Portugal.
Right.
Okay. Portugal refused to participate in the persecution of the Templars.
Right.
In fact, they absorbed all the Templars into the Hospitalier, okay, Order of the Hospital. So it's just it was in one place or the other until it was time to come over here. Okay.
Or
And,
both. I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. It could be both. Tomar, as you know,
exactly.
was a Templar
You know,
stronghold. So
we're
that would make sense.
we're in that 1307 period.
Mm-hmm.
Then they've got the Sinclair voyages, right, that came
Mhm.
over. To me, I don't think they brought the stuff with them. I think the Sinclairs came to scout out the lands that they had heard rumors about. You'd hear the rumors from the Portuguese fishermen. You'd hear rumors from the Vikings, right, who had already
Mhm.
been to Newfoundland and back, right? There's ancient mythology and history there.
Mhm.
So I think the Sinclair voyage was to find out if there was some truth to that. I think they did find truth to that.
Mhm.
But then the Black Plague occurred right after the Sinclairs, and that shut down shipping because the plague was transferred by the rats who
rats.
were in the boats. So for a lot of years, everything just kind of got shut down for a long
Mhm.
time.
Hmm.
Then all of a sudden, we're going to get to Columbus. He married a Sinclair, right? The Estrella. She was a Portuguese noblewoman. There's very strong evidence that Christopher Columbus was actually Portuguese. He sailed to Iceland in 1476 with the Portuguese, and this is documented. Okay. He also states that he sailed so many leagues west of Iceland. But Columbus always was smart enough to cover up his tracks. Again, on an assumption that he's part of the group, okay, if you want to call that, then he's not going to record everything verbatim. He is known for having 2 sets of books already on his other voyages, right? The main voyages.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that, but I didn't know if there was anything to back that up. But yeah, I have heard that.
It's out there.
Yep.
It's out there. You can find it if you dig far enough.
Right.
So he already sailed north.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in 76. There's not a lot of time frame between 76 and 92, right? He studied under Zacuto, okay, the Jewish mysticism guy. He was the guy that developed the star charts, the tide charts, the chart.
Uh-oh. I think he froze on us.
I think he
I hope
did.
we haven't lost him.
And
Oh,
you
there he
know,
is.
I
We lost you for a second
I
there,
was
Jeff.
to put a real name.
Jeff, we
There
lost
you
you
go.
for about
Yeah,
30
we
seconds.
lost you for about 20 seconds there. You were frozen.
Oh, okay. So
you're talking about Columbus as astronomer, right?
right, exactly.
Okay.
Which is how he ended up going where he went.
Now, the astronomer was Jewish, correct, or of Jewish origin?
Yes, Zacuto was of Jewish origin.
Do you think that fed into anything that Columbus was doing, being that he would have access to the Jewish knowledge of
for sure.
the constellations,
For
the stars, things of that sort?
One of the things that I discovered, and I've never seen it anywhere before, so it might be mine, or I just haven't seen anybody else say it before me, was that Columbus used 53 and 2/3 nautical miles to a degree in his calculations. And there's been all kinds of excuses why. Oh, they're Italian nautical miles, they're Portuguese nautical miles, they're Arabic nautical miles. Anyway, there's the Earth, right? There's the equator, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the equator, there is indeed 60 nautical miles to a degree. But the minute you head north or the minute you head south, the nautical miles in the degree lessen. So San Salvador, where he landed, if you go on Google Earth and you measure how many nautical miles are in a degree, you will find that there's 56 and 2/3, or sorry, 53 and 2/3. So he knew exactly where he was going. The other thing is and what got me started on Columbus, of course, is there's a passage in the back of Washington Irving's book, who wrote the first autobiography of Columbus. And this is about the trial of Columbus. He was put on trial. One, he was charged with collaborating with the Portuguese. Okay.
Mhm.
They found out that he actually sailed under the Portuguese banner up to Iceland.
Mm-hmm.
So they were kind of thinking of him as a fraud at the time.
Well, we were kind of talking about him being a double agent. I know John and I were kind of
Yeah,
seeing both
Same
sides.
Same thing. Okay. So this is the trial of Columbus. In reply to one of the interrogatories, Arius Pinzon, son of Martin, who was the co-pilot or the other captain, declared that being once in Rome with his father on commercial affairs before the time of discovery, they had frequent conversations with a person learned in cosmography who was in the service of Pope Innocent VIII, and that being in the library of the Pope, this person showed them many manuscripts. Well, it gets important. From one of which his father gathered intimations of these new lands. For there was a passage by a historian as old as the time of Solomon. I want that to sink in. Okay? The historian was as old as the time of Solomon.
Wow.
Which said, navigate the Mediterranean Sea to the end of Spain, and thence towards the setting sun in a direction between north and south, west.
Right.
Okay. Until 95 degrees of longitude, and you will find the land of Cipango, fertile and abundant, and equal in greatness to Africa and Europe. Okay. Now, the information dated to the time of Solomon, first of all. So it said if you traveled west at 95 degrees, you'd find the new land. Only back then they called it Cipango because that was the term for China. In Washington's revised edition, he adds a sentence to that. And that if you travel in the direction of the setting sun between north and south with a fair wind. The definition of a fair wind is the Tropic of Capricorn. That's the northern one, right?
That
Cancer
I'm not sure.
or Capricorn. I think it's Capricorn, which is 26 degrees north of the equator. That's 53.66 nautical miles to a degree in there. Wow. And that is where the strongest winds. But the most important thing about the Tropic of Capricorn is that as a sailor, it is the furthest north you can go where the sun is directly overhead. Because if you go further north, the sun is going to be over here. Okay. If you go further south, it's going to be over here. It's the furthest, well, no, scratch the second half of that. Okay. If you go further north, it's going to be over here. But if you keep the sun directly over your head, you've got the best winds and you've got a straight line. How hard is it to follow the sun? Shouldn't be. He had the sun and he had the stars. So he knew exactly where he was going. Now, here's the real kicker. The math didn't work. 95 degrees does not make any sense to any known meridian. It puts it too far west, okay? So I got to thinking, oh, wait a minute now. He studied under Zacuto. Where does Zacuto study? He studied from the Muslims. Where is all the ancient math from? The old ancient math is from the pyramids. That's what created physics was, the pyramids. Right. It is exactly 95 degrees from the center pyramid to Oak Island, to the nickel.
Really?
Dead center. So if the old math is based off the Great Pyramids, then that's what they considered the center of the earth at that point in time.
Huh.
So
That's
that
pretty fascinating.
was, to them at that time, that was the meridian. That was the most important place on earth. Okay. To those people that developed that math. This is the center of the earth. And that's the way everybody thinks back in those days. I'm the center of the earth. Well, people still think that way, right? So that's one thing. So to me, that is a pretty big coincidence. Okay. Then I got learning later on, and this is kind of remarkable. You know the Overton Stone, right?
Yep.
There's the
Yeah, Terry DeVoe thinks it's got the is it the Portuguese star?
Yeah,
cross
he
on
won't
it.
call him Templar. He's Templar. So that's Terry. That's fine. Far too scientific for that thought. And I respect Terry. You know what I mean? He's a learned man. You know, he's not as fanciful as the rest of us, right? I like circumstantial evidence. He likes if it's black, it's black. If it's white, it's white. And so he's more of a scientist. But this glyph is the other glyph that's doesn't quite get as much press time.
Okay. Yep. I can see that.
Okay. That's down on the lower right, just down from the other one.
Oh, so that's on the Overton Stone as well.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
I think I have. Yeah, I have seen that.
Okay. Now look at that.
Okay.
Look at those two
there's
symbols,
one right there. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So Jeff Irving, in relationship to the actual symbols on the Overton Stone, where is that? I have pictures of the Overton Stone.
Yeah.
I have a couple hundred.
The lower right. It's about 4:00 from the other.
Okay, so you have the Portuguese, the alleged Portuguese cross. You have the tobacco leaves.
Then if
you have the moon.
If you go 4:00 is down that corner.
How far down?
6 feet.
Oh wow!
Oh, wow, that's
I missed it. I totally missed it. I was there. I was there in person. Wow.
Okay. So again, that's the glyph.
Okay.
And that's a signature. And take a guess as to whose signature that is.
Wow, I don't know.
Ponce de Leon.
Really?
What?
Told you.
Can you show those again, please? I gotta see this. Wait, hold on. Okay, that's
Ponce de Leon.
Ponce de Leon. Okay,
Ponce
and you're saying that his signature is embedded in the Overton Stone?
Yep, there they are. They're not perfect, but they're darn close. Now let's be real.
Oh my God.
Ponce de Leon did not carve his initials on the Overton Stone.
That wasn't the claim. But what are his initials doing there?
But the poor flunky, that missed a shift on the boat, that got stuck on guard duty, those are the guys with nothing to do. Those are the guys that are usually chipping and, making glyphs, right? So Ponce de Leon came over on the second voyage with Christopher Columbus.
Wow.
Now, you want to know another kicker?
Okay. Yes.
Ponce de Leon, right, is famous for being the first governor of Puerto Rico, right? San Juan. St. John the Baptist. Who is the most important person in Freemasonry? St. John the Baptist. Okay. His compound is of the exact same longitude as the Overton Stone.
Really?
Within seconds, not minutes, seconds.
Wow.
So all Ponce de Leon had to do was hop in the boat, go out to the corner of the compound, sail north, and he would hit the Overton Stone. Now, I'm going to haul this up real quick. If you Google Earth, Nova Scotia, and you invert it, we're always looking at stuff sideways, right? You know what I mean? That's just the way we're programmed to look. But if you actually look at Nova Scotia from the south, it basically looks like a peninsula, right? Well, dead center in the middle of that peninsula is Yarmouth and the Overton Stone. I'm going to show it to you. So as far as a land marker goes, if you want to know where you are, that's a real easy one to do.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So again, circumstantial evidence, but I kind of like it myself.
Yeah, I do too. What do you guys think about that? Everybody's hearing this out
I
there.
mean, I'm seeing a lot of this activity
There.
in chat, Jeff. Good
Great
grief.
dead center is where Yarmouth is, in
Yep.
the middle of that peninsula, facing
Right.
south to north. And literally, if you research Ponce de Leon's compound down in San Juan, it's a straight line. What did Ponce de Leon do other than mining? He was a big miner, by the way. Okay, but he also grew the feather. The feather is not tobacco. The feather is not a feather. Okay. I have eagle feathers. I have turkey feathers, which are both.
Well, that's what's attributed to. But what do you think the feather tobacco leaf looking thing is?
It's the word I'm groping for. Anyway, Ponce de Leon grew it. It was one of his cash crops. Okay. So, so that to me was a treaty between, the Portuguese and Portuguese Spanish, the group, because they represent the group. They don't necessarily represent Spain, and they don't necessarily represent Portugal. Okay, they just represent the group, and that was a peace treaty. That symbol was a peace treaty, in my opinion, between the group and the Mi'kmaq, people. And the star or the cross is also what you consider. What's the stick you use to look up the stars? It's shaped like a cross.
Well, there's two of them. There's a sextant. There's a
thank you.
marine quadrant, depending upon the time.
Yeah.
So
and,
either or.
You look at the points. Those are the 4 points on the compass, right? North, south, east, west. So to me, yes, Columbus was responsible. Did he do the digging? No, I don't think he did. Okay. I think that was somebody else. Don't forget, on the second voyage, Columbus came with 85 ships and like 1,100 men. So, you can't tell me somebody couldn't have come up the coast. Well, one, they would have had to come up the coast to go home anyway. Even in the first voyage, Martin Pinzon was 14 days later than Columbus. And he ended up going to La Rochelle first before he came home.
Really?
What was he doing in La Rochelle, which happens to be
the point where we think the ships left with the Templars.
The alleged Templar fleet was there.
Yeah.
At one time.
So,
by the way,
I've done the math. I've talked to sailors. I've been a sailor my whole life. Okay. Yep. I work on the water. It's what I do for a living. He had all kinds of time to scurry up the coast, especially that time of year with the winds, find Oak Island to verify what Sinclair had said, and then scoot on over and meet up with, Columbus and company, a few weeks later. Okay?
Well, that's something that we were going to
talk. And then, like I said,
yeah, I was going to bring that up too and talk about that. So, and this is something that I wrote down from what we were talking about earlier before the show. The logistics of Oak Island.
Yeah.
Why would Oak Island be involved in this? What you're thinking?
Well, because it's a perfect location. I'm not saying it's the best island in the bay, but it's certainly a great island in the bay. Because prior to all the destruction, it had quite a mound in behind the money pit. So you could easily park a boat in behind there and nobody would even know it's there.
Right.
So
that's true. Yeah.
Specifically, Oak Island is very good in that area. Okay. But in the big picture, great circle sailing, which is a term, known by a lot of people, to sail over here from Europe, you had to sail down the west coast of Europe, down the west coast of Africa, hit not the Azores. The Azores? What's the Portuguese ones? Is that the Azores?
Oh, I'm not sure.
So the lower islands where Columbus left from. Anyway,
I think those
off the coast of Morocco. That's where you basically turn right to go to the New World. And they still do it today. Non-powered ships still take that route. There's another thing, the Saragossa Sea.
It's the Azores. I just confirmed it. It is the
Azores.
Azores. Yeah, Morocco.
Yeah. The Saragossa Sea is a great big. We used to think it was an island, but it's documented in Christopher Columbus's boat that he had to detour around it. It's actually seaweed because of the nature of the winds in the Atlantic Ocean. The seaweed collects, and it's miles. In some places, it can be as like 200 miles long by 40 miles thick. You can't sail through that. If you enter it, you get stuck.
Right.
So, and when they brought the replica ship here, the Nina here a couple years ago, I talked to the captain about that. He said, absolutely. It's well known that it exists out there. Some people have even thought of it as a mystical island because it's so massive. People actually thought it was an island because they didn't try to venture into it. Right. So, and line of sight on the ocean, well, it's, even from 40 feet up, it's a matter of small miles, not big miles.
10 miles. So, if you're basically at sea level, you can see 10 miles to the horizon.
Right. Give or take. Exactly. Yep. So you're not going to venture in something, you might not get out of. So you're going to skirt around it. And it is documented that Columbus skirted to the south of it and then got back on track. Okay. So it's another reason why everybody came the same way. And when they get here, you can't turn around because the boats were never large enough to tack into the wind to create forward motion. Right. So they had to follow the Gulf Stream up the coast and the winds up the coast.
That makes sense.
And then, those winds anywhere from the end of Nova Scotia to basically the northern tip of Cape Cod, depending on the time of year, the season, storms, is when that right turn occurs for when you start sailing back towards Europe. And then the currents spit you out the west coast of France. Just as simple as that. The only other route is what Columbus investigated, which is to go to the northern part of Scotland, go over to Iceland, hop, skip, and a jump over to Greenland, come down the North Stream, or whatever they call it. But that's too risky. Because
I heard it was really treacherous, too, at certain times of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I ran into one couple, and they did it, and they said they'd never do it again because I live in a port.
It's not that far. I mean, Jean-Jacques Cartier, in his journals, writes it's about 22 days with good wind from France to the Nova Scotia area. That's not that long. About 22 days.
And he took the shortcut.
So in bad winds, and bad currents, maybe a month from Paris, Portugal, France, that area to Nova Scotia. That's not long. It's not long. You think it would take months and months and months, but it was a pretty short jaunt.
Yeah. One thing about Cartier, in his journal, the French king sent him on a mission to the New World to discover an island in the middle of a cross that must possess a wealth of gold and other artifacts. Now, he is most famous for finding Montreal, the island of Montreal, which is an island in the middle of a river which forms a cross. St. Croix Island, which is where Champlain landed, is an island because that's 4 miles from me. I look right up the river at it. I've been on it 50 times. That island is in the middle of a river. Shaped like a cross. So the legends, is what they were looking for. Champlain left here and went over to Port Royal. Again, an island in the middle of the river. It was brought up. Well, Oak Island's not in the middle of a river. No, but it's in front of the Gold River.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There in Mahone Bay. Yep.
And don't forget, a legend that starts at Sunday at the pub tends to not be identical by the time it hits the pub on Friday night.
That's
right?
true.
You know what I mean?
Some
So,
embellishments.
and especially if they're trying to keep secret. So,
Sure.
you know, I firmly believe that, you know, one, the Templar treasure was in Jerusalem. I think it was smuggled out the back door, like that diagram I showed you, smuggled out the back door of Temple Mount. Okay. I think it went down to Petra. The Crusades, when they took Jerusalem, the first king did not set up shop in Jerusalem. He set up shop just outside Petra. Crac de Montreal was the seat of the king. Why would he be down there when he should be up in Jerusalem? Because they were looking for the treasures that they knew were buried in Petra, in all those caves. You look up Petra, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. All the engineering you needed for Oak Island, they learned from Petra.
Oh,
How
yeah.
to preserve water, how
Interesting.
to make waterproof cement with silica was known Crusader time from Petra. So I think it went from Petra to France once they got it. And then in 1307, either or both, Scotland and Portugal, and then to Oak Island.
Right.
And then, you know, what happened?
It was Oak Island the only stop?
Who knows?
Was Oak Island the only
sorry?
stop? Was Oak Island the only stop? You said the Oak Island. Are we saying Oak Island as a final resting place for the relics, if that's what you're inferring? Or are we saying someplace beyond, perhaps?
Who knows? Who knows?
Okay.
You know, my personal theory is you're not going to leave it on Oak Island because you're not going to develop the new world in Nova Scotia. Okay?
Makes sense.
The new heart of the New World Order, back in those days, I hate using that term, but, you know, America was founded not without religion, but no religious involvement in government per se.
Right.
And
Keep
no
them separated
monarchy.
from the papal, you know,
Right.
from
And
the
no
Vatican.
monarchy.
Right.
It was a democratic society because they had seen how it had failed in Europe and everywhere else, right? So they were smart enough to come up with a new plan. But it wasn't for Nova Scotia because Nova Scotia is not year-long sustainable. Okay?
That makes sense.
You can't create a world in Nova Scotia any better than what was already here. So they had to go south where they could develop crops. If you have crops, you have something to sell. If you have something to sell, you can create a monetary system.
Sure.
And, you know, so, you know, I think as soon as they got Jamestown off the ground at some point in time, probably in the 1600s, okay, it was removed from Oak Island and taken down there. That's my thoughts.
Into the Jamestown area or into the just in the
Well, that's where
Virginia?
Washington ended up being, right? The center of the new world, if you want to call it, right? So,
and that makes Washington was a Mason. And if you look at the 1723 Masonic Constitution, Anderson's Masonic Constitution, it eerily mimics our own Constitution.
Sure.
The most important, you know, in Masonry, they always say the most important degree is the third degree, which is freedom. It's the degree of resurrection and the freedom of mind. And guess what we cherish in the States? Yeah. It's freedom. I mean, it perfectly matches. And there's other Masonic things going on in the States. But and then you put the kind of separation of church and state. So as Jeff said, the Vatican can never get their hands on the new Masonic state, which is what I believe America really is a Masonic state.
Sure it is. Yep.
Masonic
so,
culture.
I mean, you know, time frame wise, you know, for all the bacon lovers, because there's a lot of bacon lovers out there. And you know, I think they were involved. There's no doubt about it. There's a code in fact, I just sent it over to Jake yesterday. There's a code in Shakespeare that he didn't know that I sent him, that I discovered a long time ago.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, it basically alludes to, you know, that effect. So, you know, I don't think the Bacon era were the depositors. I think they were the removers. If they were involved, which I believe they were. I might as well just say it. I believe they were. But I think they removed it from Oak Island. They didn't deposit. I think there's enough evidence now circumstantial with carbon dating and everything else. That something took place
Mm-hmm.
much earlier. You know what I mean? And like I said, my leading candidate still is right after that Columbus era. You know, Ponce de Leon was on the scene till 1521 before he died, but he left a raft of kids. Columbus had kids. They were all there. You know what I mean? It just makes sense. You know, Ponce de Leon, I mean, how much gold they stole out of the Mediterranean or Caribbean was just shameful. And I know it all didn't go back to the monarchs.
Exactly.
It
And
was
yeah,
stored on Oak Island for the creation of the New World, because these guys wanted to create the New World. You know, they didn't want persecution, religious persecution. How much religious persecution was there of the Jewish nation from the Catholics at the time? You know, they suspected Columbus of being a Sephardic Jew, so he left the day before the Inquisition, right? Literally, he set sail the day before because the king said, you need to get out of here. You know what I mean? So, you know, the New World, there would be none of those persecutions, supposedly.
Sure.
You know, instead they just came over and, you know, killed half the Aboriginals instead. But, you know, and I'm saying that lightly because, you know, everybody, you know, a lot of people don't like Columbus, rightly so. I'm not a Columbus supporter. I support the theory, but not his actions. I don't, you know, any more than I like the actions that took place here in Canada or in the United States. You know, conquering nations, that's what they do. You know, does it make it right? No. You know, do the First Nations people have a right to be upset? Of course they do.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So,
yep.
You know,
Yep.
And again, now, you know, it's spinning back into the whole CCH, but I mean, we covered that. But, you know, history is what it is. We can't change it. We can just do better tomorrow, right? So,
yep, exactly right.
So let me ask you this: where do you think you said the whatever's there went south? You know, is it coming down to Williamsburg, Jamestown, or has it just been moved with unknown destination?
Well, when you see the book called The Ark of the Covenant and the Quest for the White
I'll
Stone
be the first to buy a
for
copy.
$9.95, you can find out the answer to that question.
Absolutely. Oh, okay. So you have a theory on this. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to buy it to see what it is.
Yeah, no, that's
Hey, you want to read all the good articles? You know, I won't show you the front cover. You got to read all the good articles.
Yeah. But, you know, that's very interesting because, you know, we've talked about that, you know, so many times, you know, on the show, whether or not people believe that there is treasure, i.e. gold and silver and all that, plus any religious artifacts remaining on Oak Island. And a lot of people feel, and I happen to be kind of one of them, I'm still open to, you know, be told I'm wrong if they find something significant, but to say that it's already been, I believe it was there.
Yep.
And again, we go back to the whole thing talking about why would somebody go to the extent of burying something so deep in the ground? Pirates are not going to do that. And who, like John Edwards always says, and you guys were talking about it earlier, who would have the capability of doing such a thing?
Yep.
It's always the same. It's the same. It's the Masons, the Cistercians. I mean, you're also thinking engineering here. The British engineers, possibly the British and French, were near the island, on the island. You're talking Templars. I mean, it's a very small group because you have to have the manpower, the wealth, and the engineering technology to be able to bury something there.
And that answers, you know, the first 5 questions, right? Who, what, where, when. Who, what, where, when.
Well,
but we're missing the most important one, and to me, it's why.
Exactly.
Why would they bury the religious artifacts for eternity? Why would they bury Shakespeare's manuscripts for eternity?
They wouldn't.
When I first made presentation to my family, okay, this is a long time ago. Because I told you, I had the end of the story, but then I had to fill in the blanks. Okay. And, you know, and I read a lot of the Bible. That had a lot to do with it. Okay. You know, the Ark of the Covenant was always taboo. Oh, you can't open the Ark of the Covenant or you get struck by lightning. It'll melt your eyeballs.
Well, look
You know
what
I
happened
mean?
on Lost Raiders and Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, come on.
Melted faces.
But it says that in the Bible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because somebody did
He
take the
touched it
peak
and
one
was
time, and
yeah.
he was instantly melted.
Yeah.
Right? There is a part of the New Testament, okay, which, you know, it's about evil, good versus evil, and God versus the devil, and how God banishes the devil for 1,000 years at a time. And then for 100 years, every 1,000 years, he rises and wreaks havoc, but then he goes back. Okay? That's in Revelations. When I first made presentation, I thought, and this is to my family, because at that point in time, I decided to take a year off and spend my life savings writing this really short book.
You're still working on it.
It's still going.
Yeah, 18 years later. And so, the punchline, I had two endings. It's kind of like a Netflix movie, okay? Hit option 1 for ending 1, and if you didn't like the way ending 1 ended, you can press option 2 and see if you like that one. So the first one I hit was what was in the Ark of the Covenant. What could be so important to bury the Ark of the Covenant 200 feet underground?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you always see the movies, the Rock movies there where, they're excavating something and then all of a sudden they release Satan himself, right?
Yeah, yeah. Then all hell breaks loose.
Well, they got that from the Bible. That's literally kind of a Bible story, right?
Sure.
And so, I kind of went along with those lines, okay? The only reason you would ever bury the Ark of the Covenant, the most important religious artifact in the history of religion, okay, is that, it must contain the devil himself, so they don't want him ever to rise, But no, I don't believe that. But I did spring that on and thought, oh my God, that's just wonderful. What a great start. And I said, yeah, but that was all bullshit. or bull crap. And I said, so, but no, this is the real thing. And I do believe it is somebody important. I do. If the church has wanted it all these years, what would be the only thing that would really set the church up on its heels is somebody important, whether it's, the remains of, Jesus himself or Miriam or Mary Magdalene, who knows? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I didn't put them in there. Okay. Right. But, you have to think of why. And at the end of the day, it's going to be pretty darned important. And to me, that would be important. Right.
Yep.
But not important enough to leave it in there for eternity.
Exactly.
But
right.
important enough to go to all the bother of hiding it.
Right.
Okay. To take everything to Scotland, well, that's just about as far away from the Pope as you can get. Okay. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? The northern part of Scotland's a long way from the Pope, and they never made it past the Hadrian Wall. Okay, because they didn't want to fight the guy that runs around in kilts in the middle of winter because he's a pretty rugged fellow. Okay, so there's just the little common sense things like that make it a fun story. I'm not publishing a history book. Mm-hmm. Okay, I started out that way. I was going to set the world, on its heels, but then I realized no, there's not enough. There's no smoking guns anywhere. And without an actual smoking gun, we're just telling a tale. And I'm fine with that. I think it's an interesting story. And, who knows what's going to come out of the ground. If they prove to me that there's a solid Templar connection, they've already proven the Spanish thing. I don't think they're going to haul up a log with Christopher Columbus's, initials in the corner. Okay. Right. I don't think I'd ever be that lucky. But, but if it's anything close to that, that just ties into my story. I just got a couple of the wrong people involved.
Sure. But, I mean, you're talking a line of thought, and it's either, like I said, Masonic, Rosicrucian, Templar, yep. Same symbols. You see this symbolically. Oak Island has a ton of, things that are commiserate with that line of thought, such as the 9 levels of the money pit, which is
Yep.
the Enochian vault.
Oh, for
And
sure.
instead of the Delta of God, you find the 90-foot stone. I mean, the stories are very parallel, you know, and you have other things. You have an all-seeing eye, you know, there, which is commiserate to some of the Templar, Rosicrucian, Masonic symbols. I mean, there's so many overlaps there. It's in that line of thought somewhere. And Jeff and I always go back and forth is, where in the line of thought does Oak Island lie? Is it one group, like the Templars only? Is it 2 groups? Is it 3 groups? Is it all the groups that just keep revisiting it because of the significance symbolically, and maybe even the significance of a possible resting place of something historic?
Well, again, my simple way to explain that, it is a group that involves all those people.
Yes.
Right?
I would say the line of thought.
Not too many of them.
Yes,
just
it's the same line
not
of
too
thought.
many of them, because otherwise somebody would have leaked the secret by now.
Yes, it's a very close net
exactly
group of people.
And I'm sure it's passed down through generations of generations of generations.
Oh, and it's passed down through families too. Joe McGinnis' family.
If you look at it, like grief. There was 72 apostles. Am I saying that right?
That I'm not sure.
I think they had 70.
Somebody in our chat will know for sure.
Yeah, someone can verify. I think that's correct. But
who were the tight circle? What were they called again? I'm just having a brain fart.
The disciples.
12 disciples.
Yeah, there was 12 disciples, but I think there were 72. I think they were called apostles. I think. Okay.
Yeah, 72 is correct.
Okay.
Just looked it up. Yep.
Well, if you take a family of 72 people, right, and each group in the 72 have multiple generations, because you can't leave it to one generation.
Correct.
Because they could all get wiped out by COVID.
Yes.
Okay. So you've got to have 3 or 4 generations of each member of that group. Then all of a sudden 72 would cover it. Right? You know what I mean? So if you had 72 people, 72 members of the group of various ages from 10 to 70, you would be able to keep the story going by the numbers without leaving it to 4 people who happen to meet on a subway and the subway crashed that day.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
and when I'm implying it's a group and a group and a group, it's the same line of thought. It could be 10, 15 different groups, but the line of thought's consistent. And I think that's what's important, whether it be 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 groups. That line of thought, the esoteric knowledge, is consistent throughout all those groups. You can look at the esoteric knowledge, you can look at the symbology, all of it lines up. Every time.
It's just a spider web. Okay. Well, when you look at, and that's why it's taken me so long. I started out with this, okay, and now I've got this times 10. You know what I mean? And it's been quite a journey. My daughter graduates high school in the spring, and then she's off to university. And then I'd really like to have some time and money to sit down and finish the thing. You know what I mean? So we'll see.
We need to get this book.
I'm dying to know the solution, Jeff. Come on now.
I know you teased us with it, so we got to read this thing. So, but I'll tell you what, you can certainly launch it right here when you get this thing done. Let me know, and we'll have you on the show, and we're gonna make this thing so.
Yeah. Well, everybody said, how come you haven't published? Like, well, I don't want to publish the wrong story. Everybody rushes out. Exactly. Since the Oak Island craze, everybody's been publishing books. And it's like, well, that's great, but you might be right, you might be wrong. I don't want to be might.
Right.
I don't want to be the guy
Gretchen Cornwall, she's in the group tonight. She's out there. I've seen her chatting with a few people, but she said the same thing.
Hey, Gretchen. I love her. I think she's awesome.
We all do. Yeah, Gretchen's awesome. We love her a lot. And so, but she's exactly right. And she agrees with you on that. You have to be, it shouldn't, 18 years of doing your research like you have, but you have to go through all those pains to make sure it's all correct, because you're putting your theory out there. You're putting your reputation on the line with what you write. Yeah. You better make it right. Yeah. As much,
Jake and I, when I sent him my little code yesterday, at the end of the speech, it was, the first job of any theory is to disprove it, right? Because if you don't, somebody else will. So, the very first order of business in any line of thinking is to disprove it. So if you can't, then it becomes a what if, okay? Right. But with this mystery, and I kind of like, there is a little bit of writer in me, and so actually I'm just going to read it because I thought it was somewhat clever on my part. It was a good line, and I said, but like most really good mysteries, the smoking gun is always, and I mean always, missing. Respecting the mystery is knowing that the perpetrators leave us just enough to stay in the chase, but they are looking back with clarity while we look forward in the fog.
Yes, that's very well said.
I love that.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing. They were smarter than we are, or it would have already been dug up.
Exactly. Yep. So exactly right.
And just that fact alone, because there's been a lot, and when you read the articles, there's been a lot of smart people involved. There's been a few duds too, don't get me wrong. But by and large, there's been a lot of smart people involved in this since day one. And a lot of important people, and so that again goes back to the respect. And people put their hearts in it, like Dan and his wife and David. David and I have had a few conversations along the way, obviously, and they sank their whole life into it.
Yep. Yeah, that's
the Restalls. The Restalls lived in a shack in the middle of winter in Nova Scotia. Like, come on, you guys.
Gave their lives for it.
Exactly.
That story alone, that's just an insane article, actually. That's crazy what they went through. Not that I'm trying to plug the Oak Island Library, but there's a lot of great reading.
And like you said, let's do that again, because it is a great read, folks. And again, we'll bring it up for those of you who may just tuned in recently during this. The Oak Island Library on YouTube. We do have a link to it in the description down there. Great stuff out there that you should go check out. It's free. You can join, whenever. And as Jeff said, he's going to be constantly, updating this with more and more and more information as we go along. So it's not done yet. He said he has more that he hasn't even got to yet. And by the way, that was Gretchen that said, spot on, Jeff Irving. Yes, the smoking gun. We're all looking for it.
I can't see any comments. So I'm gonna have to suffer through this twice. First live, and then I gotta go back and then make the corrections. I don't think I've misspoke too many times, but
it's always nice when you do that. We get a chance to go back and kind of comment on that. And we've missed. There's been 150, 160 comments just on the YouTube side or on the Facebook.
Wow,
side.
There's that many bored people on a Saturday afternoon. We're doing all right.
Oh, Jeffrey Irving, this is good stuff. You know it.
I may have a contest before Christmas.
Oh, really?
What a lot of people don't know is that there's a different copy of McDonald's Reader's Digest article.
Really?
Okay. And I'm going to leave it at that. And I may give one away because they are quite a valuable little item. The soft cover version of that story in Reader's Digest, they get insane money for that. I don't even own one because I refuse to pay like $300 for a Reader's Digest. Okay?
Yeah. I think Linda I don't know if Linda, somebody has one.
Yeah. Anyway,
Linda does have one. I think she told me that at one point.
I have a few other versions of that. So if for everybody that joins from this show, because I'll know, okay, who joins, because I'm not going to do any more advertising till maybe 2 weeks from now. Okay, because then I'll know who came from you and then who came from my other, little thing.
They can say if they join and they say we're joining watching you on J Free 906, then you'll know.
Bingo.
That's great. I love
got
that.
it. Got
Sure.
that, folks? When you
And that
join,
works for you too. That works for your thing.
yeah,
too.
I get it.
And then what I'll do is I will just get my daughter to randomly pick a name out of the list. Okay, so
Can we have that
she
drawing
doesn't
live?
know anybody. She thinks I'm off the scale, crazy, ready for a mental institution. So I mean, she does not follow this whatsoever. Okay, so do you have the article? Linda, I shall take the Fifth Amendment on that.
Wow. Jeff, I hope you do that drawing live somewhere.
Yeah, probably will. Yeah, no, I will actually.
Let me know.
I wasn't gonna do much live stuff on the library. Just
have you in like real quickly, Joe, doing a recap.
I got all you guys to stick my name out here. I mean, you guys know I had my own show in the very beginning, but it was just too much work. You know what I mean?
It is.
And you guys know how much effort it takes to put a show together.
Oh yeah. Yes, I do.
And one of my earliest videos just resurfaced this week, so I sent it off to Jake, and I hadn't seen that. And it's like that was either, I don't know if it was the very first one I did or like the top 3 anyway. So I listened to it for about 5 minutes and said, okay, I have to turn that off.
Yeah, Jake Roberts is great. We love him on the show. He's been a good friend to this show for sure, and we always check his out on Sunday nights when we can because But most of the time with Jake, I mean, when you're watching his stuff and him go, you have to pay attention so closely because it's like, what? Oh wait, what? And you're lost. If you daze for a second or look at your phone because you got a text for a moment, you've just missed the important part of what he was saying every time.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I Oak Island binge. I'll go for a few weeks, and then if I happen to get a free night, I don't usually get home till 7 bells, and by the time I clean up the dishes, walk the dog, feed the dog, the whole 9 yards, get cleaned up, it's like 9 o'clock, and for a senior citizen like me, that's bedtime. So if I get an early night where get an extra hour, I'll binge on Oak Island stuff, and I'll hop into some shows.
Yeah, you're gonna have to.
I think the whole thing, the whole Oak Island experience now is so much fun. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm kind of getting back into it a little bit. For a while, it was work. You know what I mean? And when you don't get paid, it's purely work. And Facebook changed the way they did things. And then all of a sudden, your views, when your views get cut 2/3 in 1 week, Facebook's done something.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yep, sure.
And they did. They changed it all.
Yep.
And then it was like, the return, the views versus the amount of hours it took for me to do a show. Because I didn't have any guests, right? I had to put all the stuff up on the computer and the screen, and half of it was backwards. And, I wasn't going to invest in the equipment. I wasn't going to invest in the sound studio. It's like, I just don't have time. And, my daughter was getting older, and so was I. And, unfortunately, when you have kids, you have to pay to put them through school, right?
Yeah, well, yes.
But the thing is, you have to actually feed them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you've always got this platform. And like I said, we really appreciated you coming on here today because this has been fascinating. And anytime that you would like to come and join us with new information or when you get that book done, we would love to have you back on the show because I tell you this, and that's why, that's one of the reasons why I created this show and brought people like yourself on here and John Edwards and all the other Gretchen and all the other people that Court Lindahl's been on the show. And it makes it so that we allow for you all to get your theories and the work that you've been doing and all your research out to the public in the little way that we can. And we know, just like you said it, you mentioned it earlier. You go on Oak Island and you're in front of a camera for 4 or 5, 6 hours. Gretchen went through the same thing. So report. And then when it's all said and done, you're on the show for about 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
7 minutes and 56 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're like, wait a minute, where's the rest of this story that we didn't get to hear? And that's why I wanted to do this, because
Mhm.
it gives you guys the opportunity to now take a 2 hours or whatever you got and let's have it.
Yeah.
You know, get it out there.
And the nice thing is, you know, and it was funny because, you know, I sat down with Dan, you know, before he passed away. This was one of my trips down. Because took the family down there one time to do the tour, and then if I was working in the area, which I do a lot of work on the south coast of Nova Scotia, you know, I'd pop in the summertime and squeeze on a tour. And I sat down with Dan one time. He was sitting there like he always used to in the museum. I said, and I knew he didn't know me from a hole in the wall, right? Because Dan was kind of hands off the show, right? Other than the specific shots,
right?
He came out and talked to the tour, you know, when they were on the tour. But by and large, he didn't get too much involved. So I knew Dan did not know me. So I sat down and said, "So what'd you think about that Columbus guy? Who? What? What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, what did you think about that, you know, theory about Columbus coming up here?" And the first words out of his mouth was classic was, "And I'm live. I'm doing a live thing on Facebook. Oh, I've done but hogwash."
No.
It's like, oh, really? I just spent all this time.
But that was his nature. And, you know, Dave's the same way. Dave says what he thinks.
Yep.
I always
he does. Yes, he does.
When I have presented, okay, you know, leave it at that. When I have presented, I've always sat next to Dave. And Dave's great, right? Because you can just see him, you know, in the corner of your eye going, "Oh, what a crock of crap." You know what I mean?
Oh, man.
But it's all fun. And it keeps the story alive. I mean, there's two aspects. There's the search, the real search, and then there's the TV show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people make the biggest mistake of confusing the two. You know what I mean? And they get critical. And, you know, I call them the naysayers. And, you know, and they can get on your nerves, especially when you do your own thing.
Yep.
And, you know, you get the hate mail, you get the love mail, and you get the hate mail. And, you know, but at the end of the day, it's a fun story. It is a great adventure, and the real part of it is as real as it gets. And I think that was probably one of the main reasons why I created the library, and I'm publishing the articles in the moment, because you get the live interviews in the moment over a glass of Drambuie at the restaurant table. You know what I mean? You get the unscripted comments from the people in the moment. And, you know, and I think that hopefully will just give people a better appreciation than this is just a made for television TV show. You know what I mean? So,
there it is. I brought up that picture real quick because there
you go.
Right
there he is.
And I think if you can see right in front of me, I think is the Quran. And there's the great big Bible I brought with me. And I sat them down. Yeah, there's the Quran underneath my iPad. And I set them down on top of the table. And the first comment out of Dave's mouth is, "Oh, great. Here we go." So, anyway.
I wonder what's in his coffee cup right there. We probably, you know, a little Crown maybe. I don't know.
No. Diet Pepsi.
Yeah, but he's great. We like Dave a lot. He's a great guy. But yeah, you know, but you're right. You're absolutely right. You got the TV show, and you got what's really, you know, the treasure hunt, or the hunt for the and I truly believe that, and like you said before, that something passed through there. Is it still there? I don't know. I'm on the fence on it. I would love for it to be there. I'd love for him to dig up, you know, find the chapel vault, crack it open, the concrete. We talked about concrete earlier, the concrete encasing thing. Crack this baby open, and let's find out what's in there. And hopefully the hammer grab doesn't chop the Ark of the Covenant in half.
Say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Well,
We
Drew's
had a
right
great
through,
show right up till the last
right
minute.
between the two cherubs, Jeff. No.
We see this big cloud forming with a whirlpool over top of Nova Scotia, and we're like,
Actually, Jeff, I think you're safe because I think you would have already been struck by lightning if that was true.
yeah, probably so. Yeah, exactly. So, but that was, but that's the thing, and we know that folks like yourself, are still researching this, and you're going to find out sooner or later. They say the Ark of the Covenant will not be found until man's greatest need. I think that's how it's something like that.
Yeah, that is
Speaking
true.
of,
go ahead.
That okay. There is a myth out there that the TV show created the curse. False. 1967. There is reference to 7 must die. Okay.
Really?
Or the treasure will reveal itself. 1893. The boys found red clover and, of course, the canopy oaks. I'd never heard of the red clover. Red clover was not indigenous to North America. It's actually a Western Europe thing. Portugal, Spain.
Really?
So that was one thing. And the original myth, which is stated in here, is that when the last of the 5 oaks die, the treasure will be revealed. Okay. Now, when I read that the first time, there were 5 canopy oaks out on Isaac's Point.
Right.
Okay. And I thought, well, maybe they're not talking about just the last one that topples over. Maybe they're talking about the last one on the way out. So, I sent that down the pipe and said, I'm sure somebody's looked around for those oaks. But those oaks, there's no trace of those oaks. Those were long destroyed, dug up, whatever, a long time ago. Because yes, it was on the Blankenship's hit list apparently to try and find the roots to those canopy oaks, because then you could endochronology is, whatever the fancy term for that research was, and of course you could carbon date them too, right? But the carbon dating, I mean, it doesn't tell you the source or anything like that, but it would have been nice information to have. So there's all kinds of just little details that kind of just, show up in the library that are kind of cool.
Right.
So it is not a myth. The curse of 7 is as old as the 60s. I'll put it that way.
Wow.
Because it is written in the 60s. One of the articles, I forget exactly which one.
And so that would have been prior to, let's see. Yeah, prior to some of them actually passing. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Yep. So yeah, we're going to wrap this up as we've gone a little over 2 hours. I usually try to keep these to 2 hours because, but I tell you, this has been so fascinating.
Great
information.
Yeah, I've had a great time.
I really hate to end it. I really do. But so folks, go out there, check out the Oak Island Library on the Facebook page. It is linked below. If you join that, just put a little thing in there to say you're joining because you watched it on JFree 906.
Oh, actually,
there might be.
Yes, they can do that. But I just thought of something. Just tell them I don't put those. I don't put anything on there that's not library specific.
Okay.
Like if you'll notice in the page, there's very few comments, like standalone posts.
Right.
James McQuiston, and I love James's work. I don't dive into it because I try not to get too involved in other people's work because I want to read it myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I explained that
Makes
to James.
sense.
Because he had asked me if I knew this, and I said, well, no, not really, because I try and stick to my line of thinking.
Right.
But, I put in his comment, but I don't put the comments, well, thank you for welcoming me to the group and page and all that stuff. Because what happens is the articles get lost, right? Because if you've got, 200 posts of, oh, thank you for letting me join, very few people will go down by 10 posts. typically. Okay,
Right.
according
Yeah,
to
that's true. We find
the
that too
nature
also.
stuff.
Yeah.
So, they can send me comments if they want, but I have a recently joined list, okay, in the map in there. So I will know who joined
Okay, cool.
from 2 o'clock on. So they
Sure.
don't actually have to comment. But,
All right, good.
because otherwise I'm going to delete all those comments now that I think about it. So I'll spend the next 5 hours deleting,
Yeah, well, Linda was just talking about it. She said she just put up this thing here. Said if we comment, Jeff doesn't have to post it, but he can see it or something. I don't know. She knows all that stuff because she is like the wizard of Facebook group adminning, and
that's why I'm not up to date. I don't have any wizards, and I get a kid that has no interest in it.
I'm not going to lend her out. I'm sorry, she's not.
Not really. No, I'm not going that far in. Listen, I'm going to publish. I'm going to do my Oak Island public service. Okay, okay, and publish the articles until Esquire or Gentleman's Quarterly sues me, and then I'll have to shut her down. But until that time, we're going to run with it.
Well, I kind of do the same thing here with pictures from Oak Island and from the TV show and stuff. But they've been, they have talked to us once and said, "Oh, you have to change something that we did," and we did. We complied, and that was it. And we've had one thing in a year. By the way, it was been a year now that this show has been on. We started this back in November of 2020. And here we are 1 year later, and we are at like 18,060.
Hey, guys,
wow, that's awesome.
Great.
Blows my mind that we've grown this big, and the YouTube channel is still going great. We're at like 1,210 subscribers now.
Wow.
I'm glad you've got all kinds of time on your hands.
I wish I had more, because John and I have he's dragging me into this research thing. I said, "Look, I'm just the face on the show," and John's like, "No, we're going over here. We're going to Gettysburg. We're going to do Mothman. We're going to do all these different things."
Well,
Oak Island.
One surprise I do have.
I need to be retired. What I need
well, like I said, my daughter's off to school in the fall to university. And January 23, right? Next year's 22. January 23. I've always believed that if you're going to talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. Mm-hmm. So I'm going on the tour. I'm going to start in Egypt, and I am going to go to Jerusalem, and I am going to follow my story all the way through Europe. I might be on the road for 3 or 4 months, or however long it's going to be, with a backpack. There's no budget for fancy hotels, so I'll be calling up. If you're friends on my Facebook and you live in Timbuktu and you've got a couch in the back office, I might need it. So
no problem. You can come by here. I tell you what, I'd love to go with you. I really. When are you doing this?
I'm going to try and take off in January of 23. That's my goal.
Wow. So, I would love to go. I would.
Well, like I said, I want to look at what I think the people were looking at it when they did it. So
I know. I would love to go. I know, John. Like I said, John and I have talked about it. I want to go over, and I got to go over and meet Gretchen. Gretchen has already said that I can come over into the UK.
Nova Scotia, Jeff.
Huh?
Nova Scotia, Oak Island.
We got to go to Nova Scotia. I know. Here I've been talking about
Get
it
your passport
for almost 2 years now, and I have not been there yet because of COVID. That's my excuse is COVID. But I tell you what, it's been fascinating. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on here today. What an honor it is for us to have you here and to share your insights and everything with us, and talking about the CCH out there on the island, the Oak Island Library, your theory. Mm-hmm. And man, I tell you what, I am itching to find out more about your book. I really am. This is fascinating stuff.
Well, we'll throw some snippets out here and there.
Good.
We had a great conversation. Listen, that was a lot of fun, John. You're a great co-host, Jeff. You've always been a good host. It's easy to be with the two of you. Okay, it's been a lot of fun, and I'll definitely be back.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Very, and there's Columbus and a few others, you know. May the curse be with you. May the curse be with you.
We didn't even get to talk about that. I was going to say too, I'll say real quick because you just did that. There is, and I have a picture on my computer of a prominent person from Oak Island doing that hand signal.
Geez, it wouldn't be Marty, would it?
I wonder.
And who do you think they got that from, huh?
Probably, yeah.
You,
I saw it, I caught it, and I was like, I took a screenshot of that, and I've been.
What do you think I did when I saw it that night? That's like the old Carol Burnett, you know, saying goodnight to her husband, right? When he flashed that, I was like, yeah, you just get through calling me full of crap on the show before, but now you're flashing my symbol.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, there's the real story and the TV story.
Exactly. And on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Hey, folks, thanks so much for being here with us tonight. Or today, it's still daytime. Today with Jeffrey Irving, and man, it's been wonderful. John Edwards, thank you so much for co-hosting here tonight. And we Linda and Jan working out there, and I know Jack Campbell's out there someplace too, probably watching. But thank you guys so much. Thank you, folks, for tuning in with us today and joining us on the show. We appreciate all your comments very much, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button out there on YouTube. All right. Have a great rest of your week. We will see you on Wednesday night at 7:30 for episode number 4. And we are going to have Jeff Irving back on the show. Bye-bye, everybody.